Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Thank you very much for coming back to a slightly truncated room. I hope you enjoyed your tea, your coffee, and your scones. Anybody here have 2 scones? I asked that because I had none, and I will hunt you down like the dog you are. If I get ratty by lunchtime, it's his fault. Right, so this breakout session is basically a panel discussion. I am the imposter sitting at the end here because I intend doing remarkably little for this. Instead, I'm going to hand over to DC Kelly Thorburn, who will introduce the various panellists and essentially run the whole thing. So, Kelly, over to you.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. So my name's Kelly Thorburn. I'm a Detective Constable at Police Scotland. I work in the Cybercrime Investigations Unit, which is a surprisingly small unit which covers the whole country. Our remit is high-level cyber-dependent crime, but we're moving into a bit more, do a lot of cryptocurrency inquiries now, obviously deal with ransomwares, network intrusions, and we're doing a bit more proactive work as well, which is really interesting. So I'm by no means the expert in all this. I'll be learning a lot from the panel while I'm here. My background in policing is I've got 13 years police experience, none of which is in cyber apart from my current role. That's the joy of policing. You can do so many different things. So I've been response policing, I've been intelligence, I've been proactive drugs unit, serious and organised crime, and I've been in cybercrime investigations for about 3 years now. So it's changed a lot in the last 3 years, as I'm sure everyone's teams have. So it's good to get to come out to these things and sort of let you all know who we are, because we might come across you one day, hopefully not, but, but yeah, we might get to speak to some of you. So I'll introduce the panel briefly and then I'll let them introduce themselves. So we've got Jessica Amery, who's Group Threat Intelligence Analyst at the Weir Group. We've got Nick Leitch, who's Cyber Threat Intelligence Manager at Lloyds Banking Group. And then we've got Mike Smith, former colleague of mine, who is Cyber Incident Response and Threat Intelligence Manager, big title, at the Cyber and Fraud Centre Scotland. So I will pass ladies first. Go to Jess to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And thank you everyone for kind of coming along and listening to us speak today. There's a whole host of amazing events going on, so very flattered that you've all turned out. So my name's Jess. Prefer to go by Jess, shorter, quicker, easier. And I lead up all of the kind of threat intelligence programme right now at the Weir Group. For anyone who doesn't know who the Weir Group are, neither did I really until I started working for them. I spoke to my granddad and his first reaction was Weir pumps, for anyone who is familiar with what they used to do. But the Weir Group are a multinational engineering and mining organisation, so we're kind of based anywhere and everywhere around the globe. However, we are headquartered in Glasgow.
Okay, Nick.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Kelly. Nick Leitch. I am the Cyber Threat Intelligence Manager for Lloyds Banking Group. Been there for 3 years. Prior to that, I had a journey very similar to Kelly, where I was in law enforcement for 15 years, 6 years in cybercrime operations, and then serious and organised crime before that. So it's kind of done the journey of Kelly and then gone into the private sector and been able to pull through some of the experience from law enforcement intelligence and being able to apply some of those skills and capabilities in the private sector and try and cascade that through. So thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, on you go.
Sorry. Mike Smith from the Cyber and Fraud Centre. You may previously known it as the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. So unlike Kelly and Nick, I did my full time in the police, 30 years, and towards the end of that I was working within Cyber Protect for 5 years, and then moved across to the investigations team, same as Kelly. So now, as I say, the Cyber and Fraud Centre and the Incident Response and Threat Intelligence Manager there. So we're kind of developing and moving forward with threat intelligence, primarily hopefully supporting SMEs. I know some of the speakers earlier on have talked about medium-sized enterprises, but it says our business demographics after is supporting SMEs.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We were just discussing earlier, actually, that I actually took Nick's seat in the very office that we're in now. So it's quite nice to be on a panel with you all.
It broke, didn't it?
No, the desk was very neat and tidy. So before we start, we are using Slido, so if you have any questions throughout, feel free to pop them up and I'll try and keep track of them as we go. And we just wanted to get an idea before we start, just in the room, obviously lots of different people here, but who here has CTI sort of in use or within your organisations? Show of hands. probably 50-50, it's not bad. So we'll try and sort of aim our answers based on that. So first of all, we've gone through a few questions that we think are going to sort of pull out some key points. So just to start with, where do we start with threat intel for your organisations? And I'll go to Nick first.
Sure, I think some of the important pieces with threat intelligence is before you can collect, process, analyse, use, is you need to know yourself. You need to know where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, so that you can then start targeting the collection of that intelligence to answer your specific questions to your needs of the organisation. Too often we can drink from the hose pipe of a threat intelligence that's out there. There's so much out there, but it's being very, very specific on what you're looking for. And by knowing yourself, you're able to start doing that.
Thanks. Jess, anything to add?
Yeah, probably just to echo Nick's point there. I think quite often we can, as an industry and broader, can get quite dragged down with some of the hard-hitting headlines. Ultimately, to start with any threat intelligence process, think of it like a risk. Think of it like a key business risk and how you're going to defend your core system. So what are your crown jewels? What would cause the most disruption if they were to be impacted? Start from there. Gather your information, identify your assets, use that to move forward.
Yeah. And Mike, just thinking in your role, probably dealing with all sizes of businesses, but quite often some smaller businesses as well, what would be your sort of initial advice to them in terms of where to start with threat intel?
I think, having heard one of the speakers earlier on mention that a medium-sized enterprise has got 25 to 49 vendors, I think taking a step back and just understanding the size, understanding the maturity of the business, and not getting bogged down with software or continually adding to software or vendors who will say, well, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, is just taking a step back, understanding the architecture of their own business, and not getting bogged down with 10 vendors, 25 to 49 tools, and all of a sudden you're just treading water, you know.
Yeah, thanks. I know we discussed this a bit yesterday, but in terms of where to go out initially proactively and get threat intel from, how would you rate social media as a first line of getting some intel?
I think it's definitely got its uses for the less mature. I think what you're relying on is that 1,000 eyes approach from external and what other people are seeing, and they use today social media is where everybody's finding the quick message through. Mm-hmm. So it will give you an idea of a trigger of what's going on. Mm-hmm. As for trustworthiness, that can be questionable, and it's then at that point is where do you go to next? And I think that's where likes of the trust groups come in, mm-hmm. experience comes in, and working with likes of companies like the Weir Group and the Scottish Business Resilience Centre, as it was, Police mm-hmm. Scotland, in that information sharing. That's the first piece, is talk to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that's really important. We find it in the police, we'll take information from anyone and happily share it out, but we don't know whether that happens in the industry as well. Is there any sort of reliable sources that, if someone has zero CTI going on, is there any reliable sources that you would say sign up to this now as a starting point? Or does it depend too much on the organisation and what they need?
I think starting out, you've got your big vendors, they're out there. They're going to give you generic, widespread, big visibility information about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And to start off with, that might be all that you need. Yeah. And you don't need to go into that really scalpel, granular approach into that intelligence mm-hmm. until you mature and able to use that properly. Would you agree with that, Jess?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And something else that I would maybe add in there. I know we kind of identified about 50-50 of people in the room have currently got CTI. You might not have threat intelligence, but you might have an EDR or an antivirus or some level of network protection. Go into your tools and understand what data is there. 99% of the time in one of those tools, there will be threat intelligence in there somewhere. And even better if it's specific to your organisation, whether that's taking an incident and correlating it to live data. If there's not threat intel in there, speak to your vendors because they might even throw something in for you.
Yep, thanks. So we're conscious we've not got a lot of time. We've got a few points to cover, but we're going to move on to some lessons learned from an incident that actually happened at the Weir Group. Try not to bring back too many bad memories for Jess, but sort of specifically in relation to threat intelligence, what lessons would you say that you've learned in relation to the incident that happened at Weir Group? It's probably maybe if it's worth a very quick summary of what happened for everyone in case people aren't aware.
Yeah, so quick summary as to what happened. If you Google Weir Group Cyber, you'll probably read the headlines for yourself. But the Weir Group were subject to a ransomware attack towards the kind of end of 2021. What I would say off the back of that, and what we did learn as a company specifically from an intelligence perspective, is the importance of sharing. We shared with all the relevant agencies, even when we were kind of in the trenches, you could say. We made every effort to share, whether that was TTPs or more static indicators of compromise, so that they could be distributed out amongst the relevant channels. What we also done post-incident is we've done a lot of proactive outreach work, whether that's through, I know Nick's touched on the trust groups, whether that's through the trust groups or through kind of relationships that you develop out with the community and inside Scotland and broader afield. Share what we've learned and share that kind of full incident timeline. Obviously, I won't go through that today. We would probably be here all day. But the importance of sharing and the importance of building those relationships up. And what we have found is that because we demonstrated the ability to do that, like I say, even when we were kind of firefighting, is that people have returned the favour. And when other organisations and other groups have information, that they are sharing that back with us, and that's really nice to see, and we're glad to kind of be, I suppose, used as quite a positive example of not being scared of sharing information.
Jess, can I ask you a question? Prior to the ransomware attack, did you have a plan in place that said, if X happens, this is what we do, these are the people we contact? So
I would love to be able to answer that kind of fully. Unfortunately, I actually only started at the company 2 weeks prior to the incident itself, so baptism of fire, you could say. We had the relevant business continuity planning in place. I don't think you can ever really plan for an event like that, not fully anyway. You can never really understand what you're up against. But we did have, from an intelligence perspective, channels by which we were, I suppose, looking to share. And I know someone's mentioned MISP already in Slido, things like MISP, engaging with NCSC, Police Scotland, the Scottish Central Threat Group, places like that.
Yeah, and I would just say that I know that Jess dealt with some of my colleagues through in the West regarding the incident, and it probably felt like to the Weir Group at the time that we were just going in and take, because we want all the information, but it's probably quite a good thing to kind of bust a few myths in relation to what Police Scotland can do in that sense. Like, we will take all your intel, we will take, whether it's reported as a crime or whether it's just reported as intel, we'll take it all on, and there actually are things we can do with it. You know, we've got a really good, one of the great things about policing in cyber is the network. We've got a huge network across Britain, across internationally. Our partners, we're on kind of, first name terms, pick up the phone to people all over the world. So if there is information that relates to IOCs, anything like that, we can get them around quite quickly, and we can share them anonymously. We can share, we will always work with a company to say, right, what can we share? What are you happy to share? But if that can potentially help another investigation, or another company around the world, it's really worthwhile reporting to us. And it doesn't have to be you're reporting, a huge crime and you want full, response to it. If you've got a little bit of intel that you think you don't know how to get it out there, we do have a great network, and hopefully, a lot of the things that Jess provided to us as a result, of their inquiry, we've been able to share with our network, and it will hopefully feed into that big, huge picture. And quite often these inquiries take a few years to come to fruition because of the nature of the groups, but it does work. We've seen it work. So I would encourage you all to sort of have us in the back of your mind in terms of sharing intel as well, because we will do our very best to either action it or share it out where needed.
Yeah, and I would just attest to that as well. Kelly and her colleagues are really lovely, really approachable when it comes to sharing information. I think there is somewhat of a reluctancy, and it's not sector specific, it's more across the entire industry, to share information, because I think some of it's fear of being judged, some of it's fear of that information being breached and there being kind of a breach of confidentiality there. Some of it is going down to maybe more traditional kind of legal implications that you might face within your own company. But yeah, I would just back what Kelly says in the fact that her and some of the other agencies that you might deal with are great.
Yeah. On that note, sorry, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that, you know, the small, medium-sized businesses that Mike's dealing with, you know, the larger organisations, likes of Lloyds or likes of the Weir group, we do have capability. And when you share that information to ourselves, we can do certain things with that and we'll share it back. And we share that back so that you can defend yourselves. It's not all about us and what we do. It's making sure we're part of that community. And like said, Digit today is building that network, as Jess said, is we're here. Let's come together because we're faster, stronger together. And some of us might not have capabilities, but some of us do. And I think that's where it comes into being supportive in that digital citizenship in that space as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just noticing one of the questions there that feeds into it. So someone's asked, do you rate CISP from the NCSC as worthwhile? Mike, I know you've probably used CISP quite a bit in the police and in your current role. You got any thoughts on how useful it is for information?
Yeah, I was going to say in terms of in what the last conversation was, and I staff the incident response line for Scottish Government, and it is a lot of the time the case that the reporters or the people phoning in don't want to report to Police Scotland, or there's no need to report to the IOC, the ICO, but it is the case that we can take the information and fire it into, sometimes it's CIS, we can fire it into Police Scotland, so there's a direct in, and then that is then circular and will go around whether or not it's a banking or whether or not it's a cryptocurrency inquiry or it's cryptocurrency addresses. So the intelligence that we get just sometimes from the most obscure call can make a huge difference. So, but from the SME side, I think there was a word mentioned earlier on in the presentations. It's all to do with trust and networks and building these at the Cyber and Fraud Centre at a strategic level. My chief exec is trying to pull together the CEOs and the banking sector and law enforcement at a higher level to sort of say, look, we need to address this and we need to feed back in and we need to work on the threat intelligence.
I noticed a question that just popped up there just now, and how do you join these information sharing groups? Are there any particular platforms that you guys use within your roles that you think are most useful for sharing information, or is it just about building your network and getting those contacts?
So I think kind of starting off, I know the Scottish Government's starting out at the moment, but to kind of contribute that as it grows, is SC3 would be a start for Scotland. And linking in with Mike in the Business Resilience Centre, the Scottish Cyber and Fraud Centre, we'll get in trouble for that one, is linking into organisations like that and using that as a starter. And then for your different sectors that you work in, there will be trust groups out there that you can go to specifically. So likes of the banking or the financial, we've got FSI's Act that we can use. There's a global organisation, there'll be others elsewhere, and then there's the NCSC. Yeah,
Cyber Scotland Week 2022, the SC3 was announced, so I mean this could be an exciting area over the next 6 months, for example, as this develops. It was there to support the NCSC, work alongside the NCSC in terms of incident response, in terms of threat intelligence. So, yeah, there is a lot going on in Scotland at the minute.
Yeah. Thanks. I've kind of moved off of our topics now because there's so many good questions coming in, so I'm just going to go with some of these. But has anyone got any? Well, someone's asked, how do you measure how effective your threat intelligence is? I know obviously it'll depend on how much you've got in place, but is there a way to work out what's effective for a business of a certain size or their needs?
It's really difficult. Threat intelligence to put a measure on is really difficult because you are working in the sort of grey quite a lot. I think it comes down to once you know yourself and once you know your weaknesses, is it, and then also speaking to your CISOs and then finding out what keeps them up at night and then working out from there. Do you want a quick response for certain things, or do you want us to give the phone call? But it's that time to respond always is one. And I know Marco brought it up that, you know, it's time barred, but actually the quality as well, I think is really, really important because we drink from the fire hose and we can fire IOCs everywhere. And you can say, oh yeah, I've sent 5,000 IOCs in the last 7 days to the SOC to block.
Yeah.
Well, actually, how many out of those 5,000 have actually done anything to protect the business? 4. Is that a good matrix? I don't think so. So it's looking at the quality of the data that you're sharing and the intel that you're sharing, I think helps. But as to define it, really difficult.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to work it out.
Yeah.
I think just to probably add to that as well, KPIs, KRIs, your usual metrics, ultimately, that kind of fact-based management approach, as kind of Nick said there, look at how many of your static or dynamic indicators that you're pushing into your environment have actually resulted in an infection or an attack being blocked. But I think it's important to remember that there's different types of intelligence. So you've got your tactical intelligence, you've got operational, and you've got strategic. They will all be measured in different ways. Your strategic intel, specifically, that'll be used to help inform business decisions. That'll be helping inform your overarching business risk. That's the type of intelligence you're going to be pushing up to the chain, up to your C-level execs. Get their feedback, see what they think. Is it useful? Is it not useful? Sometimes just having those conversations is really important. We might put something out that we think is going to help, but ultimately it might just cloud judgment, or it might not kind of assist with those bigger decisions that are being made. But when it comes down to your tactical and your maybe more operational intelligence, producing metrics sometimes can be a good start in terms of defining how effective different, for example, data sources could be.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Someone's asked here as well, in relation to the Weir Group incident, what was the initial source of the ransomware? Is that something you're able to share, or no?
Probably not something that's worthwhile discussing as part of this specific panel, but I'm not sure if there's a name on the question. Whoever it is, come and chat to me after. Like I say, we're doing a whole lot of proactive work in terms of sharing the information that we've got. I think if I go into all the minutes, I would just take up all the time, and no one would want that. So if anyone is interested, come and speak to me after. We are doing so much outreach, so if anyone hasn't heard the presentation that we're delivering already, which, like I say, we are delivering to anyone and everyone who'll listen, come chat to me and we can get that organised.
Great, thanks. And it kind of leads on to a question that we talked about discussing anyway, which is, what do you think is the biggest threat in the threat land, or what do you think the biggest threat will be for 2023? So I suppose in terms of ransomware attacks or any other type of attack, is there common themes that you're seeing day to day? What do you think is the biggest threat?
Yes.
Oh, big question.
I know.
I'll get out my glass ball. So this will vary from business to business. I think if you're speaking at it at a really high level, something that's applicable to probably everyone in this room is your initial access brokers. That is becoming such a big game with a lot of money in it. You're no longer just relying on these ransomware groups, for example, who might get a foothold in your environment. You've got dedicated teams who are extremely experienced and who invest a lot of time and money in, for example, social engineering or vulnerability exploitation to get that first foothold. They can then sell that on. So it's almost that they've got a fully fledged supply chain now, and we're fighting up against that. So yeah, I would say initial access brokers, if we're going, something that, like I say, can probably apply to everyone in this room.
Yep. Anything to add, anyone else on that one?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jess in that space, but the other one I'm looking at is in the IT industry, we're very focused on computers, servers, networks. But one that's really hitting forward as life moves more and more away from the laptop or the desktop, is going into the mobile phone space. And I think that is where we have quite a big gap. While we do have some controls in that space, and there is AVs, etc., but I think that is the attack vector that is going to get exploited even more, whether that be through the IABs or with specific targeting. And that's going to reach into a number of areas, from your high-level espionage to even to the simplest credential stealing, and using that to pivot from. So that's where I think we will be in, and it will just continue to escalate and escalate, as we saw with, and that's about, and fairly recently with the Samsung 0 day and the attacks that could be done from that. So yeah, that's where I think it is.
Yep.
I think we mentioned as well, I mean, phishing will continue on absolute scale. And one thing that was mentioned earlier was ChatGPT. I think there's a huge unknown in relation to AI. I mean, most of us haven't even got our head around it. And it pops up on phones every morning. I don't know what's... I mean, we've got AI that's passing high-level degrees and solving complex mathematical problems. What's around the corner for 2023 in terms of AI, I have no idea, but it certainly could be sinister. I've certainly got that feeling. Yeah. If it in the wrong hands, anyway.
And you look at yesterday with Elon Musk and co calling for it to be stopped.
Stopped, I know, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I just noticed a question there. Mike, I'll maybe come to you first and then I can probably add a bit from the police side of it. But someone's asked, what's the biggest challenge in getting businesses to share information on incidents? Now, you probably get a lot of businesses that haven't reported to us that do come to you. Does anything come through as to why they haven't reported to police?
I think there's a bit of an unknown with the police. I think they think that you're going to, you touched on this, you're going to come along, they're going to come to your door, take your servers, take staff away for statement taking, etc. Your business is already in crisis and the next minute there's a whole team going to be coming in, and it couldn't be further. In fact, that's the same with any incident response as well. You know, how are they going to come in? Couldn't be further from the truth that the police work with reporters from the start to the finish, and we will work around exactly what it is that you need to get done. And if there's an incident response company on Police Scotland, we'll work around that as well. Yeah, I think it's just a bit of a note. In terms of sharing intelligence, well, in terms of reporting to Police Scotland or to the Cyber and Fraud Centre, one thing, if there is anything that is more top level, and sometimes it's a call from a metal manufacturing company, but it turns out that they've got a contract with the MOD, is that the Cyber and Fraud Centre and Police Scotland can escalate things quickly. It might be the case we need to get the NCSC on board. It might be the case we need to get the MOD on board. And we can fairly quickly, a couple of hours, have a multi-agency meeting with the people that we require to be speaking to round the table on Teams or whatever. So things can move quickly, and it's just sharing that, well, whether it's not intelligence at that point or whether it's not just information on an incident, but we can be speaking to the right people fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, what we see quite often, I think Jess touched on it in terms of there's sometimes a legal aspect. Businesses aren't quite sure what they're allowed to share, what they should share, so they just don't report it. And we understand that, and you know that's just probably never going to go away. We also, I think, get a lot of is that thing thinking that we're going to take up a lot of your time. And what we always say to any business that's going through it, we'll have an initial conversation. That might be half an hour, it might be an hour, depending on the incident. But we'll always say, right, do what you need to do. We fully appreciate that recovering the business is the priority. The police investigation isn't. It's a bit different from other crime scenes because normally, like if there was a murder, we'd be like, stay out of the room, don't go near it, we've got it, we're going to secure it. We don't do that with cyber incidents because we're not the experts in it. We will let you do what you need to do to recover the business, to get everything in place. If you can pull out any IOCs along the way that might help us investigate, we'll let you know what kind of things we're looking for. And if you can just filter them to us, then we'll work away in the background. But I don't think businesses really know that that's even an option, and that whole sharing it with the wider network can be great. And I think Nick touched on it as well with how Lloyds would, feed back. If you give them intel, they'll feed back that something that might help the business. We would do the same if we feed out to our partners and they go, oh, we've seen that incident somewhere, or oh, there was one of those in Germany and they've got a decryptor key for that ransomware, then we'll share all that. So there's probably things that we can do that people don't realise. And I just think a lot of, when it comes to cybersecurity incidents, it's everyone's day-to-day business that's here. So you just deal with the incident, you go over it, and it's for you, it's run-of-the-mill, that's your job to deal with it, and they don't really think about it being a crime as such. So it's a mixture of things, I think, but we are here and keen and willing to get involved.
I would just probably add to that as well, Kelly, that I think a lot of people, and I don't know about those in the room, but I'm speaking at it from probably a slightly different angle than I think I'm the only non-ex-coffer on the panel, so take that as you will. A lot of us don't know where to go when it comes to reporting, and I think that's fair. There's a lot of different channels. You've got Police Scotland, you've got the not SBRC, Cyber Fraud Business. Sorry, Mike. You've got all these different reporting channels. Where do you go, and how do you know how to get that intelligence out? I think if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's that all these agencies, at least my kind of experience has been, they work really closely together. So take your pick. Speak to any one of them, and that information will be kind of kept in confidence if you request it to be, and it will be shared appropriately. So yeah, I think that's probably another one of the challenges that we come across as businesses, is just not knowing where to go.
And again, you made a really good point. We work closely together. We should work closely together. We should share. And for those that don't, those bigger organisations can lead by example and give the confidence to the small, medium-sized business that we're sharing. You can share too, and we'll help you. I think that's really, really important.
Given that there are 3 ex-police officers on the panel, perhaps you can answer this question. How often, with these incidents, etc., is it an insider job?
I would say I've been in the department 3 years now. It's not been that common, to be honest. It's usually groups that we're aware of. In terms of ransomware, we've had a few lower level inquiries that have been insider threat, but it's not something we've seen a lot of. But again, is that because it's not getting reported to us? It's hard to measure it because we only see what gets reported to us. I don't know how sort of business side of it sees things.
I think even from when I was in the department myself, it was more of the destructive insider was a disgruntled employee would do something,
absolutely.
But you weren't talking the high level cybercrime taking place. It was more like website defacement or deletion of data, that type of thing. But so it wasn't that. In fact, I can say I didn't investigate any insider for the crimes that I was looking at from normal cybercrime.
Okay, thank you.
And conscious of time, I've got a few minutes left. Maybe a question that sort of could end up quite nicely. Someone's asked, what do you see as the end goal for CTI? Is there an end goal?
So I think there's numerous end goals in my opinion, and this is probably very high level to whoever asked the question's disappointment, but ultimately the goal of CTI for me is to improve our defences, full stop. The goal of CTI is to, whether that's help inform decisions, whether that's to support the proactive development of detection rules, however that may be, CTI's job is to help improve our defences, ultimately.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Just one thing I was wanting to talk about in relation to the policing in terms of just how intelligence can develop. I remember it was the last week before I left the police, and I got an email in regarding intel that had been shared about 3 years prior, and it was a server in Belgium that had been taken down in a hit that the Belgian police had done. And through the sharing of intelligence and stuff that we had shared with Europol, etc., or FBI, whatever it had got to, that then tied in with the inquiries that we'd had. So it just shows that threat intel isn't something you get an immediate reward from, but all of a sudden it ties in and it creates a bigger picture, and all of a sudden the jigsaw sort of falls into place. So it can lead, but it can very often be slow time, and don't expect quick fixes in relation to threat intel, but it certainly feeds into something a lot bigger.
Yeah, I think that feeds into one of the questions I saw actually, that someone had said, how do you weigh up when to share intel? Do you share it raw and just, like you said, Nick, fire out loads of IOCs, or do you develop it a bit and share it once it's got a bit of provenance around it? Is it just a balancing act?
I think so, and I think from the transition from law enforcement into cyber, it's understanding actually it's not just about IOCs, it's about what is the threat, what have you seen, what's actionable, and what can people take to defend themselves and defend their supply chains. And I think that's really key, that it's balancing up the audience that you're trying to send that to. So if you're sending your intel to a technical trust group and that's all they're interested in, great. But if it's about a more strategic trust group or more strategic partners that are involved in that want to understand the landscape, then it doesn't need to be so detailed. So it's that fine balance between that. But it's a matter of the quicker you can share, the quicker people can take the action. And if you hold on to it, you're only helping yourself, whereas you could help others by just sharing it.
Yeah.
And I think as well, confidence you have in it as well. So while we're saying share, yes, do, absolutely. But you will ultimately know the difference between what is a high confidence indicator, for example, and what is something that you're less confident is a true positive. Make sure that you're putting good data out there. If something's a true positive, you're confident in it, share it as quickly as you can, because it could be the difference for another company maybe going through the same situation.
I think the biggest issue for SMEs is that threat intel just isn't on their radar whatsoever. We're still trying to push the NCSC passwords, still trying to get them to invoke two-factor authentication. So to jump onto a threat intel platform is possibly a step too far, and that's really the work I think needs done now.
Yep, I think that's we're about a bit short of time. We've got loads of questions here, so if anybody wants their question answered, grab one of us later on over lunch or something like that. I think I probably need to nip away, but we'll try and get hold of people if they've got specific questions. Thank you for your answers, guys.
Okay, thanks.